A man, Lee Miller, is sent on a mission to check if a space station, the ISS, is working correct. However, as he spends his days in space, he realizes that humans no longer exist, and he is alone in the world. During the American Civil War, in 1864, a group of soldiers hides in bunkers underground. They are being attacked by the enemy, and soon enough, their bunkers are blown up by bombs. As they continue to hide underground, Captain Lee Briggs, a Union soldier, is asked by General McClane to investigate a mysterious object. As the group leaves to fight the enemies, Lee is left behind. When only Lee is alive, he goes on his journey to find and investigate the mysterious object. In the year 2039, United States astronaut Lee Miller is sent to the International Space Station, ISS, to check its safety and make the required adjustments. The ship has not been used for 2 decades due to an undisclosed reason. While he is inside the ship, he has contact with Capcom, who asks him about the status of the ship. He replies that the ship only has some issue with the RS-7 pump. The rest is operating smoothly. He spends the next few days within the ship. Over the radio, he hears of wars happening on Earth that leave him worried. As disturbing events happen on Earth, Lee begins to lose contact with Capcom. The radio transmissions are very weak, and he waits to be contacted by the operation. During this, he receives a radio transmission that he can't understand. When the control center is able to reach Lee, he receives a video message from his brother. Lee listens to his brother tell him about his new nephew and how he misses his brother. However, when the call shuts, Lee loses communication with the control center again. He hears the previous radio transmission again and questions if the operation heard it. A recording of an old man talks about how connections are important. He talks about how the world needs to talk to each other, and without the communication, the world would be a horrible place. Lee is still unable to contact the control center. Thinking there is something wrong with the radio, he tries fixing it, but finds the manual in Russian. He continues trying to reach out to the control center. Lee has no contact with the control center and is stuck in an orbit around the Earth. A few days later, he receives a recording from the control center. The man informs him that terrible things have happened down on Earth. He says that he can't bring Lee back down to Earth as he doesn't have the necessary people to do it, so he needs him to wait to be rescued. He apologizes to Lee for the circumstances. Enraged, Lee sends a message back, saying that he would need a mission extension from the control center. Mentioning that he is very isolated and stressed, he tries to convince them to stop if they're conducting an experiment on him. He asks them what is going on and tells them that they should at least inform him. Lee tries to find out how long the mission was supposed to take, but doesn't receive any conclusive answers. A recording of a man speaks about how when the interactivity is cut and a person is left in the darkness, a person can control their surroundings. Once an individual has established themselves, the environment begins to take a toll on them. To maintain sanity, a person needs to interact with someone, so their sense of reality does not change. Lee struggles to maintain his sanity while in isolation. To pass the time, he draws faces and objects on bottle caps, pasting them on the ship window. In frustration, he throws things around while he looks out of the window. Lee spends his days trying to distract himself from his pending insanity by doing different activities. He plays games and tries to keep himself busy. In a state of desperation, he looks at Polaroids of former ISS crew members that have been left aboard the ship. Speaking to the Polaroids, he introduces himself as the captain. He asks the girl in the picture who she is, but soon realizes he's speaking to a Polaroid. Lee has a dream of the girl in the Polaroid. Waking up, he realizes that the ship malfunctioned and is filled with smoke. Covering his nose until he obtains a gas mask, he goes to a pipe that is shut off. Opening the pipe, he tries to get the smoke out of the station. The pressure of the pipe sucks up the smoke in the station. Lee looks at the Polaroid of the girl and asks her out on a date, imagining what that would be like. He imagines them going downtown and looking at the Malibu sunset. He plays with a bottle cap on the window, pretending a rocket is being launched into space. Lee struggles with maintaining a grip on reality as he tries to keep himself entertained by random activities. He watches his brother's message again, but notices that the recording isn't playing right. Angered, he shuts off the video as his feelings of isolation grow. Because of his isolation, Lee begins hallucinating the girl next to him. He hears her voice, and she asks him why he's dressing up to leave the station. He argues back, saying that he needs to fix the station, realizing that he's hallucinating. The woman asks him if he is broken, but he doesn't respond. Lee puts on a spacesuit, aiming to go fix the space station. As Lee tries opening the port leading to the unpressurized module of the space station, he finds a book, packaged in brown paper and strings. Lee receives another radio transmission that he can't understand. Afterwards, he opens the package to discover it is a journal of Lee Briggs. Reading through the journal, he learns of Briggs' account of the war. His account speaks of how people around him had died and how uncertainty had ruined his life. Lee continues hallucinating the people from the Polaroids and has conversations with himself and them about the first space station. Reading further into Briggs' journal, he learns about a mysterious object that Briggs was sent to look. However, before Briggs could detail the object, the journal entries stop. This leads Lee to question why he didn't talk about the object in greater detail. Angered at the lack of information, Lee throws away the journal. Lee gives himself reassurance that he will be rescued and continues to talk to his hallucinations. However, in his conversations, he doubts being rescued, as he knows it has been a long time. 6 years later, in 2045, Lee writes his own journal entry, detailing his trauma and his situation in his account. He mentions that the systems of the space system are failing and that he has remained in perennial orbit for 6 years. Lee details the lack of contact with Earth and speaks of his determination to find help. He speaks of wanting to take the slow journey home rather than the fast demise that may be approaching him. The journal entry is meant for any person who might receive it in the future. Putting on a spacesuit, Lee exits the space system and decides that he would rather burn in the atmosphere than die in the spaceship. He aims to detach his tether and float aimlessly toward Earth. However, before he can detach himself, he is unable to, as he sobs over his luck so far. Lee is unable to do it and returns back to the ISS in defeat. Another man, in a recorded message, speaks of how life is not in control of any human being. He tells his story of how he had almost been in an accident, but had been saved by fate. He speaks of how important it is to strive for something better in life, no matter the circumstances. Later, Lee is inside the ISS, but has completely given up at this point. With unkempt hair and extensive tattoos, he has completely lost his mind in his isolation. The walls of the space station are covered with the drawings and battles of the Civic War. The chaos in the spaceship represents his diminished sanity. Receiving a signal, Lee initially ignores it, as the signal is very weak. However, a while later, Lee hears people talking over the radio and runs to look outside the window to see if he has landed on Earth or is close by. Lee imagines being told to dock and transfer over. Hearing the conversation, Lee is given new hope, seemingly contacted by other people from outside the ISS. Lee puts on his spacesuit and, after seemingly docking his ship, and walks into a giant inhabited structure. The structure of the building seems to have been made by humans. However, it is unclear whether this building is real or not, as Lee has completely lost his sanity by this point. He enters a door in the establishment, leading him to a hallway. Wandering around the hallways, he comes across a painting of a rocket. He hallucinates the rocket launching from inside the painting and later sees a picture of an astronaut floating in space. Wandering further, Lee finds objects like a typewriter and a model of the planets in another room. Walking up the stairs, he enters a room where he notices a TV playing, where Briggs is talking about his experience in space. Suddenly, Lee is inside the server mainframe, and he finds a book called A Love Story, as told by you. Opening the book, Lee finds pictures of Captain Lee Briggs with the discovery he mentioned in his journal. A gigantic, cube-like alien object has been discovered, and he learns that it may have helped humans in advancing society. In the index of the book, Lee finds his own name and types it into the computer prompt. Different machines inside the room begin working, and Lee finds himself in a generic hotel room. As Lee is confused, he hears a disembodied voice speaking to him. The voice talks about how this was the only way they could reach him. The voice tells him that everything he knew is now gone, and he is the last remaining human. The voice tells him it understands how important connections are to humans. So, they have spent many years developing a scrapbook of human memories and mementos of humanity's brief existence. The voice tells Lee that the beings look forward to meeting him in the future. After this speech, Lee tries leaving the hotel room. He is teleported outside as he fears for what is happening. However, as Lee floats in space, he is covered with golden spherical light, and the cube-like object is floating in space in the year 2045. Lee has seemingly been obtained by the cube, and it is the voice of the cube that he is hearing. The voices of the recordings are there, encouraging him to not be afraid and to reach for better, as that is how he can succeed. A computer voice talks of a wonderful experiment, of a relationship between man and machine. The computer talks about how humans form connections and how those connections become a memory. The computer says that the memory of tonight will be remembered by thousands of people. The computer says that the person was not alone and felt something that thousands of others felt as well, letting them know that it was the feeling of love. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Also, let us know what movie you would love us to recap for you.